Part 1. Adrian Cole arrived at the Meridian Room 40 minutes before the most important business meeting of his career. The luxury restaurant occupied the top floor of a glass tower overlooking the lights of downtown Chicago, where the river curved between steel buildings and crowded streets. Adrian had selected the location himself because it offered privacy, security, and the kind of quiet elegance that made powerful people feel comfortable revealing their intentions. At 51 years old, Adrian was the founder and chief executive officer of Cole Meridian Technologies, an international logistics company valued at more than $8 billion. Business magazines described him as disciplined, calculating, and nearly impossible to surprise. He had built his fortune by noticing weaknesses before his competitors noticed opportunities. That evening, however, Adrian was preparing to trust someone else with the most dangerous part of the negotiation. He placed a thick leather folder on the white tablecloth and opened it carefully. Inside was a 78-page contract written almost entirely in Mandarin Chinese. The agreement would create a manufacturing and distribution partnership between Cole Meridian Technologies and the Shanghai-based Looming Industrial Group. If the deal succeeded, Adrian's company would gain access to several major Asian markets. Revenues could increase by more than 40% within 3 years. Thousands of new jobs would be created across the United States. If the deal failed, the financial losses could destabilize the company Adrian had spent 26 years building. Adrian understood international business, transportation systems, manufacturing schedules, and corporate law. He did not understand Mandarin. For that reason, he had hired Victor Shaw, a respected corporate interpreter recommended by one of the most prestigious language agencies in the country. Victor had participated in government trade meetings, banking negotiations, and several billion-dollar acquisitions. His fees were enormous, but Adrian believed expensive expertise was usually less costly than an avoidable mistake. Victor arrived 10 minutes later, wearing a perfectly tailored gray suit and a dark silk tie. He greeted Adrian with the confidence of a man who expected everyone in the room to trust him immediately. "Everything is prepared," Victor said as he sat down. "I reviewed the final version this afternoon. There are no major changes from the terms we discussed." Adrian studied him for a moment. "No unexpected ownership provisions?" "None. No additional penalties? Nothing outside normal international standards. And operational control remains with my executive board?" "Absolutely." Victor smiled and leaned back in his chair. "You are about to close one of the strongest partnerships of your career." Adrian nodded, but he did not smile. He had learned long ago that excitement was most dangerous when it arrived before a signature. A young waitress approached their table carrying a silver tray. Her name was Maya Brooks. Maya was 28 years old, with warm brown skin, observant dark eyes, and tightly braided hair pulled into a neat bun. She wore the restaurant's black uniform, a crisp white shirt, and a clean charcoal apron tied securely around her waist. "Good evening," she said. "May I bring you something while you wait for your guests?" "Sparkling water," Adrian replied. Victor ordered an expensive bottle of red wine. Maya poured Adrian's water, adjusted the position of the glasses, and quietly stepped away. Adrian barely noticed her. To him, she was simply another member of the restaurant staff performing a familiar routine. Maya was accustomed to being overlooked. She had worked at the Meridian Room for nearly 3 years. Wealthy customers frequently discussed mergers, divorces, investments, and political connections in front of her as though she were part of the furniture. Being invisible had taught Maya how to observe. She noticed when a husband removed his wedding ring before meeting another woman. She noticed when executives smiled while threatening each other. She noticed when someone who claimed to be relaxed kept checking the nearest exit. Most importantly, Maya noticed when spoken words did not match a person's expression. The 3 representatives from Looming Industrial Group arrived shortly after 7 o'clock. Their leader was an older businessman named Chun Jinyu. He was accompanied by a younger executive named Lu Wei and an American attorney named Martin Keene. Formal greetings were exchanged. Hands were shaken. Victor introduced everyone and immediately took control of the conversation. The discussion began calmly. Chun spoke in Mandarin. Victor translated his statements into English. Adrian responded, and Victor translated Adrian's words back to the Chinese delegation. Maya returned with the wine. As she poured a glass for Chun, she heard him mention a phrase that made her hand pause for less than a second. permanent supervisory authority. Victor's translation followed immediately. Mr. Chen says the agreement creates a shared process for resolving ordinary management disagreements. Maya continued pouring. Perhaps she had misunderstood. She had not spoken Mandarin regularly in nearly 4 years. She had studied the language at Northwestern University before leaving school when her mother became seriously ill. Although Maya had never completed her degree, she had spent 3 years in advanced language courses and 1 summer studying in Taipei. She was not a professional interpreter. Victor Shaw was. Maya returned to the service station and told herself to forget what she had heard. At the table, the negotiations continued. Victor translated long statements into short, reassuring summaries. Whenever Chen pointed to a particular section of the contract, Victor explained that it concerned routine shipping procedures, insurance requirements, or international compliance standards. Adrian appeared satisfied. Maya carried a plate of appetizers toward the table. As she placed it between the executives, Chen spoke again. This time his sentence was longer and clearer. The clause would allow Looming Industrial Group to assume temporary control of Coal Meridian Technologies' international operations if a delivery dispute remained unresolved for more than 30 days. Victor smiled and translated. Mr. Chen confirms that your company will maintain full operational independence during the partnership. Maya felt a cold pressure in her chest. Those statements were not merely different. They were opposites. Part 2. Maya walked back toward the kitchen, forcing herself to maintain a calm expression. Her first instinct was to tell her manager. Her second instinct was to remain silent. The Meridian Room served politicians, celebrities, athletes, and corporate leaders. Employees were instructed never to interrupt private conversations unless there was a medical emergency or an immediate safety concern. Interfering with a billion-dollar negotiation would almost certainly cost Maya her job. She needed that job. Her mother had passed away 2 years earlier, leaving behind unpaid medical bills. Maya also helped support her 16-year-old brother, Jordan, who lived with their aunt on the south side. Every shift mattered. Every tip mattered. Losing her position was not an inconvenience. She could easily survive. Near the kitchen doors, another waitress named Denise Carter noticed Maya's expression. "You all right?" Denise asked. "I am fine." "You do not look fine." Maya glanced toward Adrian's table. "Have you ever heard something you were not supposed to hear?" Denise followed her gaze and immediately understood that the question involved the private business meeting. "No," Denise said firmly. "And neither have you." Maya looked at her. "Rich people do not pay us to protect them from their own decisions," Denise continued. "They pay lawyers for that. Serve the table and stay out of it." Maya knew Denise was trying to protect her. Still, the words did not calm her. The restaurant manager, Charles Benton, approached with his usual impatient expression. "Table 12 needs another bottle of mineral water," he said. "And make sure the coal party receives fresh coffee before the documents are signed. They are our most important guests tonight." "Yes, Mr. Benton." Maya prepared the coffee service. Across the dining room, Adrian turned to the final section of the contract. Victor leaned closer and spoke in a low, confident voice. "This is the standard execution page. Once you sign, Mr. Chen will sign, and the agreement becomes active at midnight." Adrian picked up his fountain pen. Chen said something quietly to Lu Wei. The younger executive smiled. Maya heard only part of the exchange from the coffee station. "He still does not understand the transfer clause." Lu answered. "The interpreter has handled him." Maya's stomach tightened. She could no longer pretend she might be mistaken. She remembered Professor Lin, her favorite language instructor at Northwestern. He had once told his students that translation was not simply replacing one word with another. A translator carried another person's intentions across a bridge. Changing those intentions was not translation. It was theft. Maya lifted the silver coffee tray. Her hands felt unsteady, but she walked toward the table. Adrian was scanning the last page. Victor watched the pen in his hand. The Chinese executives sat in controlled silence. Maya placed a cup beside Adrian. He did not look up. She poured the coffee slowly, then leaned closer as though adjusting the spoon. "Do not sign," she whispered. "Your interpreter is changing their words." Adrian's hand stopped. Maya straightened immediately and continued serving the table. Victor looked at her with visible irritation. "Is there a problem?" he asked. "No, sir," Maya replied. She collected an empty glass and walked away. For several seconds, Adrian remained motionless. The fountain pen hovered above the signature line. Victor cleared his throat. As I was saying, this agreement protects your operational authority while creating a fair dispute process. Adrian placed the pen on the table. Repeat what Mr. Chen just said. Victor blinked. He said he was pleased that the agreement was ready for execution. No, Adrian replied. Repeat his exact words. Victor smiled, but the smile looked tighter. That was the meaning of his statement. I did not ask for the meaning. I asked for the words. The table became silent. Chen looked at Victor and asked a question in Mandarin. Victor answered him quickly before turning back to Adrian. Mr. Chen wants to know whether there is a problem. Adrian looked directly at Chen. Please repeat your last statement. Chen did not understand the English words, but he understood the tone. He turned to Victor. Victor. Translated reluctantly. Chen repeated the Mandarin sentence. Maya watched from behind the service counter. Victor adjusted his tie. He says that the agreement creates a strong foundation for shared management. Adrian's eyes narrowed. The confidence in Victor's voice had weakened. Adrian turned to Martin Keene, the American attorney seated with the Chinese delegation. Have you reviewed the Mandarin and English versions of this agreement? Martin shifted in his chair. I reviewed the general legal structure. That was not my question. I relied on the certified translation provided to your office. Adrian closed the folder. The sound was not loud, but everyone at the table reacted. We are stopping here, he said. Victor's face changed immediately. Adrian, the signing deadline is tonight. Then the deadline will pass. The delegation is scheduled to leave tomorrow morning. Then they may leave. Victor lowered his voice. You will lose access to the largest manufacturing network in East Asia. Adrian stood. I would rather lose a deal than sign a document I no longer trust. Chen spoke sharply. Victor began translating, but Adrian raised a hand. No more translation. He turned to Martin. You may tell your clients that my legal team will contact them after an independent review. Martin stood slowly. Chen and Liu exchanged tense glances before gathering their documents. Victor remained seated. Who said something to you? He asked. Adrian looked at him without emotion. That question tells me more than any answer you could provide. Victor's face became pale. Adrian took the leather folder and left the restaurant without looking toward Maya. Maya watched him disappear through the elevator doors. She did not know whether she had just saved a company or destroyed her own life. Part 3. Adrian did not return to his penthouse that night. He instructed his driver to take him directly to the headquarters of Coal Meridian Technologies. The company occupied 22 floors of a tower near the Chicago River. At nearly 10 o'clock, most offices were dark. Adrian entered his private office and placed the Mandarin contract on his desk. Maya's warning repeated in his mind. Your interpreter is changing their words. She had spoken without hesitation, yet she had not remained nearby seeking recognition. She had not asked for money. She had not attempted to explain herself. She had simply delivered the warning and walked away. That made the warning more disturbing. Adrian called his general counsel, Eleanor Price. She answered after several rings. This had better involve a fire, she said sleepily. It may involve something worse. Within 15 minutes, Adrian explained what had happened. Eleanor became fully alert. Did you sign anything? No. Did the other party leave with the original contract? They have their copy. I have mine. Do not contact Victor. Do not contact the language agency. Do not discuss this with anyone who participated in the negotiation. I want an independent Mandarin-speaking corporate attorney in my conference room at 6 tomorrow morning. That will not be easy. Make it possible. At 5:45 the next morning, Eleanor arrived with Dr. Grace Wu, a bilingual attorney specializing in international corporate agreements. Adrian placed the contract before her. Translate every section concerning ownership, operational control, dispute resolution, intellectual property, and financial penalties. Grace began reading. Less than 10 minutes later, she stopped. Mr. Cole, were you informed that Looming Industrial Group would receive supervisory control over all Asian operations during any unresolved commercial dispute? No, the contract says that authority begins automatically after 30 days. What ends it? Grace looked back at the page. There is no automatic end date. Control remains with Looming until both parties agree the dispute has been resolved. Eleanor leaned forward. That means Looming could create a dispute, take control, and then refuse to declare the dispute resolved. That is correct, Grace said. Adrian's expression remained still. Continue. The next clause was worse. Cole Meridian Technologies would be required to transfer several proprietary routing systems to a joint operational database. Once transferred, Looming would receive unrestricted usage rights throughout Asia. Another clause required Cole Meridian to guarantee losses suffered by any Looming subsidiary, even if the subsidiary was not directly involved in the partnership. A hidden financing provision gave Looming the right to acquire a significant portion of Adrian's company at a deeply reduced valuation if Cole Meridian failed to meet unrealistic shipping targets. The contract was not a partnership agreement. It was a carefully designed corporate takeover. For 3 hours, Grace translated the document line by line. Eleanor filled several pages with notes. Finally, she removed her glasses. If you had signed this contract, they could have taken effective control of your international division within months. Adrian looked through the conference room windows at the city below. Thousands of employees were beginning their workday. Delivery vehicles moved through the streets. Trains crossed bridges. Every system he had built appeared normal. Yet all of it had come within inches of being placed at risk because he had trusted one man's voice. Could Victor have misunderstood the clauses? Adrian asked. Grace shook her head. Not these clauses. The language is direct. A beginner might miss some legal nuance, but a professional interpreter could not translate permanent supervisory authority as full operational independence. Eleanor closed her notebook. He lied deliberately. Adrian's jaw tightened. Find out why. The internal investigation began immediately. The company's security team reviewed Victor's background, financial records, professional relationships, and previous contracts. Eleanor contacted federal investigators and hired an outside forensic accounting firm. By the end of the day, they found the first connection. Victor had received 3 payments from a consulting company registered in Nevada. That consulting company was controlled by the brother-in-law of a Looming Industrial Group executive. The payments totaled $480,000. 2 days later, investigators discovered encrypted emails between Victor and Lu Wei. The messages discussed specific clauses Victor was instructed to minimize during the live translation. One message read, Cole trusts authority. Keep the explanations simple and confident. He will sign if he feels the room is under control. Adrian read the sentence several times. The words were painful because they were accurate. Victor had not merely exploited a language barrier. He had exploited Adrian's pride. Adrian had always believed he could judge character by observing posture, tone, and confidence. Victor had given him exactly what he expected from an elite professional. Expensive clothing, polished language, and absolute certainty. Maya Brooks had possessed none of those symbols of authority. She had worn an apron, and she had been the only honest person near the table. Part 4 at the Meridian Room. Maya spent the next 2 days expecting to be fired. Every time Charles Benton called her name, she prepared herself for the worst. Every time the restaurant phone rang, she imagined Adrian Cole's legal department demanding an explanation. Nothing happened. The silence was almost harder than an immediate consequence. Denise repeatedly asked what Maya had said to the billionaire. I told him not to sign. Denise stared at her. You told Adrian Cole what to do. I told him the interpreter was lying. Denise placed both hands on the service counter. Please tell me you are joking. I heard the original Mandarin. You should have told the manager. And what would Mr. Benton have done? They both knew the answer. Charles Benton would have instructed her to remain silent. Maya returned to work, but she could not stop thinking about the meeting. Perhaps Adrian had discovered that she was wrong. Perhaps Victor's translation had been legally acceptable. Perhaps the billionaire's lawyers were preparing to sue her for interfering with the deal. On Friday evening, the restaurant was crowded. Maya was carrying a tray toward the kitchen when Charles approached her. His usual confidence had disappeared. There's a man waiting for you in the private lounge, he said. Who? Mr. Adrian Cole. Maya nearly dropped the tray. Why is he here? He did not explain. Charles lowered his voice. I do not know what happened during that meeting, but please remember that this restaurant values discretion. Maya placed the tray on the counter and untied her apron. No, Charles said quickly. Keep it on. You are still working. The comment reminded her exactly how he saw her. Maya entered the private lounge. Adrian stood near the window, looking down at the river. He wore a dark blue suit without a tie. He appeared less intimidating than he had during the negotiation, though the room still seemed to reorganize itself around his presence. He turned when she entered. Ms. Brooks. Maya stopped. You know my name? I asked the restaurant. Her fear increased. Adrian gestured toward a chair. Please sit down. I would rather stand. He nodded. The contract was fraudulent. Maya remained silent. The interpreter intentionally concealed provisions that could have cost me control of my company. Relief moved through her so suddenly that she had to steady herself. So I heard correctly. You heard what several attorneys and executives failed to recognize. I only understood the language. That is not all you understood. Adrian studied her. You recognized that something was wrong, and you acted while everyone else remained comfortable. Maya looked toward the closed door. Am I in trouble? The question surprised him. For what? For interfering with your meeting. You prevented me from making the worst decision of my career. That does not mean the restaurant will see it that way. Adrian glanced toward the door. Has your manager threatened you? No. He does not know exactly what happened. Then he will. Maya's expression hardened slightly. I do not want you to get anyone fired. I am not here to get anyone fired. Adrian removed a small envelope from his jacket. Maya did not take it. What is that? A formal offer. If it is money, I cannot accept it. It is not a tip. He placed the envelope on the table. Inside was a letter from Cole Meridian Technologies. The company was offering Maya a paid position as a junior language and compliance analyst. The job included full medical benefits, a salary nearly 3 times what she earned at the restaurant, and tuition assistance so she could complete her degree. Maya read the first page twice. There must be a mistake. There is no mistake. I did not finish college. I know. I have never worked in a corporate office. I know that too. You do not know whether I can do this job. Adrian stepped closer to the table. I know you understood a complex conversation under pressure. I know you recognized a dangerous inconsistency. I know you were willing to risk your income to protect a stranger. He paused. I have hired hundreds of people with impressive degrees. Very few have demonstrated that kind of judgment. Maya looked at the offer again. Why would a billionaire CEO personally come here to recruit a waitress? Because sending an assistant would suggest that I still had not learned anything. For the first time, Maya saw humility in his expression. She sat down slowly. I left Northwestern during my 3rd year, she explained. My mother was diagnosed with heart failure. I tried to attend classes and work at the same time, but eventually I had to choose. You chose your family. I chose what was necessary. Would you return to school if the costs were covered? Maya looked at the letter. Yes. Then consider the position. Adrian moved toward the door. You do not have to decide tonight. Eleanor Price, our general counsel, is listed as the contact. Ask every question you need to ask. Have an attorney review the offer if you wish. Maya looked up. Mr. Cole. He stopped. Why did you believe me? Adrian considered the question. I did not believe you completely. Maya's face changed. I believed you enough to stop and verify. He opened the door. That was all the truth needed. Part 5. Maya accepted the position 1 week later. Her final shift at the Meridian Room ended quietly. Denise hugged her near the kitchen and told her not to forget the people who had served beside her. Charles Benton offered a stiff handshake. You were fortunate, he said. Maya looked at him. No, Mr. Benton. Mr. Cole was fortunate. She untied her apron, folded it neatly, and placed it on the service counter. 2 weeks later, Maya entered the headquarters of Cole Meridian Technologies wearing a navy suit she had purchased at a discount store. The building's glass walls and polished floors made her feel as though every movement was visible. She was assigned to the International Compliance Department under a senior analyst named Rachel Kim. Rachel was direct but patient. Your job is not to translate entire contracts, she explained. Certified legal translators will handle that. Your responsibility is to compare documents, flag inconsistencies, identify unusual language, and ask questions when something does not make sense. Maya nodded. That sounds simple. It is not. Rachel gave her 3 versions of the same supply agreement. One is the approved English document. One is a Mandarin translation. One is the final version submitted by the foreign partner. Find every material difference. Maya worked for nearly 4 hours. She found 11 discrepancies. 8 were harmless formatting changes. 2 altered delivery dates. 1 changed a penalty from 2% to 12%. Rachel studied the results. How did you find the last one? The paragraph spacing changed. Rachel looked confused. The percentage was hidden in a long sentence. but the final version was 3 lines longer than the approved translation. I thought someone had added something. Rachel smiled. You noticed structure before content. I learned to do that while serving tables. How? When regular customers suddenly choose different seats, something has changed. When one person orders for everyone, they are usually controlling more than dinner. Patterns tell you where to look. Within a month, Maya became known for finding inconsistencies that other employees overlooked. She arrived early, attended evening classes, and studied corporate law terminology during lunch. She never mentioned that Adrian had recruited her personally. She wanted her work to determine how people treated her. Adrian maintained a professional distance. He occasionally saw Maya in elevators or conference rooms, but he did not interfere with her assignments. He understood that excessive attention from the chief executive officer could damage her credibility. Instead, Adrian focused on changing the company. During executive meetings, he began asking junior analysts to present their own findings rather than allowing department heads to summarize everything. Some senior executives disliked the change. One vice president complained privately that junior employees lacked the experience to understand strategic decisions. Adrian replied, "Experience is valuable. Filtering information through 5 layers of authority is dangerous." He created an anonymous review channel where any employee could flag legal, financial, or ethical concerns without first receiving a manager's approval. He also required independent verification for every major foreign language contract. The changes were not dramatic enough to attract newspaper headlines. But inside the company, employees noticed. People who had spent years remaining silent began asking questions. 3 months after Maya joined the company, an accounting assistant flagged unusual payments made by a regional shipping contractor. The investigation uncovered a procurement fraud scheme that had cost the company more than $6 million. Previously, the assistant had reported the concern to his supervisor, who dismissed it. Under the new system, the report reached the compliance department. Adrian realized that the lesson from the restaurant was larger than one fraudulent contract. A company became vulnerable whenever only powerful people were permitted to speak. Part 6: The investigation into Victor Shaw expanded. Federal authorities discovered that Victor had manipulated translations in at least 4 previous business negotiations. In 2 cases, American companies had suffered major losses after signing agreements containing provisions their executives had never accurately understood. Victor was arrested on charges related to fraud, commercial bribery, and conspiracy. Martin Keene, the American attorney who attended the restaurant meeting, claimed he had no knowledge of the scheme. However, investigators found emails showing that he had ignored several warnings from junior legal staff. Looming Industrial Group denied involvement and blamed Liu Wei, describing him as a dishonest executive acting without authorization. Adrian did not immediately accept that explanation. Negotiations remained suspended for nearly 2 months. Eventually, Looming's board removed Liu and agreed to a complete independent investigation. The company also accepted a new negotiation team, neutral translators, and transparent legal review. Eleanor advised Adrian to abandon the partnership entirely. "They attempted to take your company," she said. "Why continue speaking with them? Because the network still has value. So does avoiding another trap. I am not suggesting trust. I am suggesting verification." The new agreement was negotiated page by page. Every clause appeared in both English and Mandarin. Independent attorneys certified both versions. Neither language controlled over the other. The final contract protected Coal Meridian's operational authority, intellectual property, and financial independence. 6 months after the disastrous restaurant meeting, the partnership was signed. This time there was no wine, no dramatic dinner, and no single interpreter controlling the conversation. The signing took place in a conference room with attorneys, compliance officers, and bilingual specialists seated on both sides. Maya did not attend. She was still a junior employee and had no official role in the final negotiation. However, the day before the signing, Rachel gave Maya the completed agreement. "Perform one last structural review." Maya spent the entire afternoon comparing the versions. Near the end of the document, she noticed that one Mandarin appendix referred to a delivery inspection period of 15 business days, while the English version said 15 calendar days. The discrepancy was probably an editing mistake, but it could have caused expensive disputes. Rachel sent the contract back for correction. When Adrian learned who had found the error, he smiled. Maya's warning had protected the company a second time. Later that evening, Adrian encountered her near the elevators. "How are your classes?" he asked. "Difficult. Do you regret returning?" "Sometimes at 2 in the morning." Adrian laughed softly. "That is an honest answer." The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside. Maya held several textbooks against her chest. "I heard the partnership is being signed tomorrow." "It is. Do you trust them now?" "No," she looked at him. "Then why sign?" "Trust is not the only foundation for an agreement," Adrian replied. "Clear terms, independent oversight, and aligned interests can be stronger than trust." Maya nodded. "That sounds like something you learned recently." "It is." The elevator descended. Before the doors opened, Adrian turned toward her. "The final review found a discrepancy." Maya smiled slightly. "I know. Thank you. I was doing my job. That is what makes the thanks necessary." The doors opened, and Maya walked into the lobby. Adrian remained inside for a moment. 6 months earlier, he would have considered a billionaire chief executive officer and a restaurant waitress to exist in entirely different worlds. Now he understood that the distance between them had been created largely by assumptions. Part 7 1 year after joining Cole Meridian Technologies, Maya completed her bachelor's degree in international studies. Her graduation ceremony took place on a warm June afternoon. Jordan, Denise, Rachel, and several colleagues attended. Maya did not expect Adrian to come. He had a board meeting scheduled in New York and had mentioned nothing about the ceremony. As Maya crossed the stage to receive her diploma, she saw him standing near the back of the auditorium. He had arrived without assistants or security staff and remained only long enough to congratulate her afterward. "You finished what you started," he said. "My mother would have liked to see it. She would have been proud." Maya looked at the diploma in her hands. "She used to tell me that leaving school was not failure. She said it was a delay." She was right. Adrian handed her a small box. Inside was a black fountain pen. Maya laughed. "Is this supposed to remind me of the contract you almost signed?" "It is supposed to remind you that stopping a signature can be as important as making one." Maya accepted the gift. "Thank you." By then, she had been promoted to international compliance specialist. Her work involved reviewing cross-border agreements and training employees to recognize linguistic manipulation. Maya developed a review process called the mirror standard. Every major international agreement had to be examined by 2 independent language professionals who never communicated with each other during the initial review. Any difference between their interpretations triggered a legal investigation. The process quickly became one of the company's strongest protections. Other corporations began asking Cole Meridian for advice on multilingual contract security. Maya was invited to speak at universities and business conferences. Her first major presentation took place in Boston before an audience of legal professionals and corporate executives. As Maya stood backstage, she felt the same fear she had experienced while carrying the coffee tray toward Adrian's table. Rachel noticed her nervousness. "You have explained this material dozens of times. Not to 800 people. Pretend they are restaurant customers. That does not help." Rachel smiled. "Then remember that you once interrupted a billionaire's contract signing while wearing an apron. This is easier." Maya walked onto the stage. She began without dramatic language. A translation can be grammatically accurate and still conceal the truth. The greatest danger is not always a wrong word. Sometimes it is a missing warning, a softened condition, or a summary that removes the consequences. The audience became silent. Maya told them how authority influenced perception. Executives often trusted confident interpreters more than uncertain evidence. Junior employees frequently noticed inconsistencies but remained silent because they assumed someone more qualified had already examined the issue. "Fraud survives," Maya said, "when every person believes responsibility belongs to someone with a higher title." After the presentation, several executives approached her with questions. One older attorney said, "You speak like someone who has spent decades in corporate law." Maya smiled. "No, I speak like someone who spent years listening while other people assumed I could not understand them." Part 8. Adrian's leadership also changed. He remained demanding and highly disciplined, but employees no longer described him as unreachable. He began holding monthly meetings with workers from departments that rarely interacted with senior executives. Warehouse supervisors discussed equipment failures. Customer service representatives described repeated complaints. Junior accountants explained irregular patterns that never appeared in executive summaries. During one meeting, a young software engineer challenged Adrian's plan to launch a new routing platform. The executive team expected Adrian to dismiss him. Instead, Adrian asked the engineer to explain. The engineer revealed that the software had performed poorly during extreme winter conditions. Launching it nationally could disrupt thousands of deliveries. Adrian delayed the release. Further testing confirmed the engineer was correct. The decision saved the company an estimated $70 million. Afterward, Eleanor entered Adrian's office. "You are becoming unusually patient," she said. "I am becoming unusually aware of how expensive certainty can be." She placed a report on his desk. "Maya Brooks has been recommended for Director of Multilingual Compliance." Adrian opened the report. "She has only been with the company for 3 years. She built the most effective international review system we have ever used. She has also completed a master's certificate in corporate compliance and trained 6 regional teams. Does the committee support her?" Unanimously. Adrian signed the promotion approval. "Then why are you bringing it to me?" Eleanor smiled. "I wanted to see whether you would hesitate because of her limited corporate history. I almost lost my company because I valued corporate history too much." Maya became the youngest director in the department. Her first major responsibility involved reviewing a proposed acquisition in South America. During the process, she discovered that a consulting company linked to the seller had provided incomplete environmental reports. The acquisition team wanted to continue. Maya recommended suspension. Several executives argued that delays could allow a competitor to take the deal. Adrian asked Maya one question. "Do you have evidence?" "I have enough evidence to justify looking for more." Adrian suspended the acquisition. The investigation later uncovered severe contamination at 2 manufacturing facilities. Cleanup costs could have exceeded $300 million. During the board meeting that followed, one director praised Adrian for making the correct decision. Adrian shook his head. "I did not discover the problem." He looked toward Maya. She did. Years earlier, Maya would have lowered her eyes when powerful people looked at her. This time, she met the board's attention calmly. She no longer felt like an invisible person temporarily permitted to enter an important room. She belonged there. Part 9. 5 years after the night at the Meridian Room, Adrian and Maya returned to the restaurant. The building looked almost unchanged. The same glass windows overlooked the river. The same amber lights reflected from polished tables. Maya was no longer wearing an apron. She was now Vice President of Global Compliance at Cole Meridian Technologies, responsible for protecting the company's international operations across more than 30 countries. Adrian had invited several department leaders to dinner to celebrate the successful completion of a major expansion project. When Maya entered the dining room, Denise saw her from the service station and rushed forward. They embraced. "I knew you would never forget us," Denise said. "I promised I would not." Charles Benton was no longer the manager. After several complaints about employee treatment, the restaurant's owners had replaced him with a woman who had previously worked her way up from the kitchen staff. A young black waitress approached Adrian's table. She appeared nervous as she poured the water. Adrian thanked her by name after reading the small badge attached to her uniform. The waitress looked surprised. "You remembered my name?" "You were standing directly in front of me," Adrian said. "It would be disrespectful not to notice." Maya heard the exchange and smiled. During dinner, Adrian announced a new scholarship program created jointly by Cole Meridian Technologies and Northwestern University. The program would support working students who had interrupted their education to care for family members. The scholarship would be named after Maya's mother, Patricia Brooks. Maya stared at Adrian. "You did not tell me. That would have ruined the surprise." "You remembered her name. You told me what she sacrificed." Maya looked toward the city lights beyond the window. For several moments, she could not speak. The scholarship would not change what her family had endured. It could not return the years she had lost or bring her mother back. But it could prevent another student from believing that responsibility had permanently ended a dream. After dinner, Adrian and Maya remained near the window while the others prepared to leave. "That table is where it happened," Maya said, pointing toward a private corner. Adrian looked at it. "I was sitting there with a pen in my hand, completely convinced I understood the room." "You understood almost everything. Almost destroyed me." Maya folded her arms. Do you ever wonder what would have happened if I had stayed silent? Yes. What do you think? I would have signed. Victor would have celebrated. Looming would have created a dispute within months. My company would have lost control of its Asian operations, and by the time I understood the contract, the damage would have been nearly impossible to reverse. Maya nodded, and I would probably still be working here. Would that have been terrible? No. Honest work is never terrible. She looked around the restaurant. But I would never have discovered what else I could do. Adrian placed his hands in his pockets. You discovered that yourself. You opened the door. You warned me before I walked through the wrong one. They stood in silence. The lesson Adrian carried from that evening was not that wealthy people should distrust experts or that every quiet observer possessed hidden knowledge. The lesson was simpler and more difficult. Authority did not guarantee honesty. Confidence did not guarantee competence. A title did not determine whether a person deserved to be heard. The world often trained people to look upward for wisdom. They listened to those seated at the head of the table, those wearing expensive suits, and those speaking without hesitation. Meanwhile, the truth sometimes waited at the edge of the room, carrying a tray, wearing an apron, and wondering whether speaking would cost everything. Maya had not saved Adrian because she was fearless. She had been terrified. Courage did not remove fear. Courage decided that something else mattered more. Adrian had not saved himself because he immediately trusted a stranger. He had saved himself because he possessed enough humility to pause. A 4-second warning had interrupted a lifetime of certainty. That pause created space for questions. The questions created space for evidence. And the evidence revealed the truth. Before leaving the restaurant, Maya walked past the table where Adrian had nearly signed the contract. For a moment, she remembered the weight of the silver coffee tray, the sound of her heartbeat, and the fear that she would lose her job before the night ended. She remembered whispering the warning and walking away without knowing whether anyone would listen. Adrian joined her near the elevator. Ready? He asked. Maya looked one final time toward the table. Yes. The elevator doors opened. They stepped inside together, no longer a billionaire chief executive officer and an invisible black waitress separated by wealth, status, and assumption. They were two people whose lives had changed because one found the courage to speak and the other found the wisdom to stop and listen.